Hello everyone, welcome to our weekly live Q&A for any fitness questions that you have. Today I mentioned earlier in the stories and some posts that we were going to have some follow-up on Ozempic questions or GLP-1, semaglutide. There's a variety of ways people are referring to it, but the GLP-1 grouping is kind of what I mean when I'm talking about all of these. As always, if you do have other questions as we're going, throw them in the chat. If I don't see them while we're still live, I will cover them next week. If you're catching in the replay, you can always submit questions still in the chat and we'll get them into the next week's live session as well. So with Ozempic, semaglutide, GLP-1 type medications, the common concern that I'm kind of hearing when people are trying to scare people off of using it is the concern of losing lean body mass or muscle mass, which is a valid concern. This is one of the reasons why I do emphasize that you've got to be looking at and getting help with a couple things if you are going to use one of the products, because the only times where it becomes a major concern is if you're not doing some form of strength training and you're not really doing anything to monitor what your actual food intake is. These products will make you typically eat less. It'll make it easier to resist those temptations. The challenge is if you're not addressing making good nutritional changes, a lot of times the tendencies are just eating less of what you were already eating to begin with. And the challenge is if there wasn't enough protein to start with in your diet, now we just reduce how much of that diet you're eating. Now we're definitely nowhere close to your protein needs. And the challenge is if we're doing major restriction in calories in any form, whether it's using something like Ozempic or GLP-1 products or other diets, if you're not getting enough protein, the body will end up burning off and shedding muscle mass along with some of the weight loss from fat loss. So that becomes an issue because we're losing muscle, which means we're potentially inhibiting our strength levels, our stamina levels. It's lowering our potential for metabolic output because muscle tissue is much more metabolically demanding than fat tissue, and putting us at a diminished level of ability when we hit our goal, and therefore making it harder to maintain the progress that you achieved with that product or doing other diets or things on your own. So we want to make sure that we are monitoring what our nutritional intake is. So I strongly encourage that you're doing some form of journaling, tracking, some measurement. You don't necessarily have to get the scale and everything out. You can use pretty easy visual comparative aids as far as, okay, 3 ounces of meat is about the size of a deck of playing cards, things like that to estimate, okay, I'm having this much of this meat, that's going to have this amount of protein in it, or I'm having about a cup of beans, that's going to have about this amount of protein in it, just so we know, are we getting enough or not? Typical ranges, if you're trying to lose weight and preserve lean muscle mass, ongoing current recommendations are around gram per pound of body weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds, that would be about 100 grams a day. The only caveat is you can shift and adjust that. If we have a lot of weight to lose, you can base the caloric needs upon your goal weight. So maybe you're 200 pounds, but your goal is to be 150. We can base closer to that 150 goal weight rather than the 200 pound weight. That's the main thing that we're looking at there. Now, with the protein intake with our nutrition, we have to pair that with a stimulus to preserve and retain, maybe even add a little bit of lean muscle mass, especially if you're new, unconditioned, untrained. If we can add some muscle mass with training while we're burning fat and losing weight, we're going to put you in a much better metabolic point for being able to maintain the progress you achieved. We need 2 to 3 times a week with strength training paired with whatever parameters your doctor has you on for your Ozempic or other semaglutide type products. 2 to 3 times a week of the strength training, getting all your protein needs. That way we know we have all the stimulus in place to help preserve and retain that lean muscle tissue. Most of the studies that have been going on, if you're taking into account those factors, we don't see the same level of muscle loss as someone would trying to just use the product and be naturally guided to not have as much of an appetite. The challenge is if you didn't have a diet with enough protein to begin with, you use one of these products that diminishes your appetite, now you're eating even less of a diet that already didn't meet your protein needs. And that's when they see the drastic amount of muscle loss with the products. So it's not necessarily that they cause muscle loss, because with studies that people were controlled for doing the strength training, getting the right amount of protein, they didn't see that. So the real factor is, are you getting your nutrient needs and the proper stimulus for muscle retention and building with your program? That's the reason why I strongly encourage, if you know anyone who is looking to use, already using one of these products, but the doctor, clinic, however they're going about getting it, isn't providing additional guidance as far as this is what you should be doing for your nutrition. This is your strength training program you should be following. Love to meet with you, talk with you, or your friends who are in that situation. That way we can make sure that they're set up for the best success with the products. Because these products, they have a cost right now. The out-of-pocket cost seems to be pretty high from what I'm hearing from most people. And there are some other side effect issues depending on who you are and what dosage level you're taking. So if you're going to go through all of that, let's make sure we're setting you up for the best success, that you've got a strength training program that's going to support this, along with nutrition guidance and intake that's going to help aid you to maximize the benefits of using this medication, rather than just taking it and kind of hoping for the best along the way. If you guys do have any other questions, feel free, you can throw them in the chat. You can private message us if you'd rather it be a more private discussion, that's fine too. But definitely would want to make sure that we're getting you set up in the right direction for success with this. Feel free, throw it in. If you do have questions, you can throw them in the chat, private message us, we'll answer either way. Otherwise, just keep staying consistent in your persistent pursuit of health and have a great week.